Well, doggone it.
There we go. Can you hear us now?
Thank you. Thank you for that warning. Appreciate it. Well, you should hear us now. Give it a couple seconds. You stay there for a second. All right, well, let's try this again.
Let's try this again. Welcome, everyone. There we go.
We're back now. We actually talk. So what we were saying is we put up an interview that we did with Teresa Capel, New Mexico Tech. Talked a lot about a lot of the resources that were available at New Mexico Tech. They're from... Okay. All right, our station engineer has given us the thumbs up.
Perfect. There we go.
See, what we talked about last time, too, was interdependency and the fact that we really need one another.
We really need to rely on our friends here to help us out sometimes, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Because we get talking, and I got to watch all these dials and things. Oh, my gosh. Okay, so there we are. We're talking now, and we've got it. But we had a good interview with Teresa Capel. Told us a lot about a lot of resources at New Mexico Tech. We talked about Melissa Begay and tactical breathing, some of the classes going on there, Maria Wilkins, some of the classes going on with her, what mental health is, how it applies to our life, how it's not something that just happens, that it takes effort, whether that's by natural causes, whether that's by childhood trauma, whether that's by poor diet. It's something that we need to be more mindful of, our mental state, and in the community we need to be mindful of that it doesn't just happen. Good mental health and mentaling up, even preparing for an exam, as we discussed, requires proper diet, exercise, like the 5K Stomp Out the Stigma that we're doing right now today. So we really have to be aware of that. And it's a really good conversation. You can catch her on the other video that we did, and it's available now on Facebook. And we're going to do this one now. And as we closed off that last interview, we talked about the seasonal depression and suicides that occur at this time of the year. And unfortunately, New Mexico, in Socorro County, we're 8 out of 33 counties. That's where our ranking is in Socorro County. Now in the nation, New Mexico is in the top 10.
Yep.
So we've got a real issue here, and it doesn't just apply to kids, it applies to people of all walks of life. And we talked a lot about interdependency, and just like we just had here, someone help us, hey, we can't hear you, great. That's interdependency. We're all going to make mistakes, things are going to happen, things are going to go bad. We can't schedule when a tragedy is going to happen. It's going to happen on a birthday. It could happen on an anniversary. It could happen on Christmas. That's life. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to reach out to one another and help out. And we really want to talk about suicide right now. It's a difficult subject, but Sam's got some really neat subjects, and I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about suicide, and we're going to go back and forth.
Yeah, we're going to kind of bounce back and forth here a little bit so you don't get tired of listening to one of us.
Okay. All right, Sam, take it away. Tell us some statistics and some things about suicide here in New Mexico.
Yeah, so like Reese said, we are in the top 10. New Mexico is definitely in the top 10 as for suicide rates, in the nation. We have a lot of compounding factors to that. We are a rural area. Access to resources can be quite challenging. Definitely there are phone numbers out there. Right before the break, we mentioned that there is a helpline. And so definitely if we start talking about something and we start triggering something, there is a helpline out there. It's 1-800-255-TALK. And that's the suicide prevention hotline. You can also just go to Google, type in suicide prevention, and it'll pop up first one. So definitely, if we trigger something, there is help out there, people who you can talk to.
Yeah, and it's important, and it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage and a lot of strength to say, I need help. Mm-hmm. It's not an act of cowardice. It's not an act of weakness. It's a very brave and courageous act, not only for you, but for all the people who love you and around you and who your life is a part of in our community. You're more valuable than you think you are at these times. So please, if you do find a trigger, please reach out. 1-800-255-TALK.
Yep, exactly. And, kind of going along with that, part of today is all about reducing that stigma around talking about mental health. We have so many cultural impacts that really affect our ability to talk about our mental health and to be okay with saying, I'm not okay. Not just for you, but even for your friends, family, coworkers. It's definitely a very important topic to discuss. We were talking about suicide and how we rank 8 out of 33 counties. We're pretty high in our suicide rates, and something that we even talked about in the first segment, it's not just youth. I know a lot of people out there get very concerned about our youth, and it is definitely a hot button topic for our youth as well. We do have some very high rates of suicide amongst our youth here in Socorro County. Unfortunately, many of you out there I know are affected by suicide and the ripple effects that caused.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
We actually showed a movie at the Loma called The Ripple Effect. So little trailer there for it. Feel free to come check it out at the Loma. We do every last Wednesday of the month. We do a free showing over at the Loma to discuss mental health issues and really start breaking into that topic in the community. Our next one is December 15th. Just plugging that in there.
December 15th at the Loma, new Loma Theater.
Yeah, new Loma Theater. It looks really nice. You get free concessions too.
Oh, cool.
We're all about that bribery.
And thanks to Melissa and Brian for opening that up to Scope and making it available in the community. It's a good asset to have. So thanks, Melissa and Brian.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we've got so much concerns about mental health, and one of the things that we definitely wanted to talk about was some of the signs of suicide. We mentioned that it was really a big concern for youth, but not just youth, for our middle-aged participants as well. It actually affects every age group. We have a high rate of completed suicides for men, middle-aged men, and then they are 4 times actually more likely to commit suicide versus their female counterparts, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So sorry, Reese, hate to put you on the spot, but
no, it's true. I mean, it's difficult because, especially middle age. I mean, at a certain point with a male, you're supposed to have a certain level of independence, a certain level of self-reliance and things of that nature. You have a lot of stigma put on you as the resource provider for your family, what you're supposed to be able to provide, and the quality of life that you're supposed to provide for. And unfortunately, here in our county, the economics are not very good. We've got over 30% of our population in poverty. And, and unfortunately, instead of looking at our community and saying, hey, what's wrong with our economic development? What's wrong? I have a lot of good skills and a lot of abilities, so why am I not prospering? It can be very difficult for a man at that point, to not recognize that the failure is probably not isolated within himself. And it's difficult because we have this idea of a very strong man who is a provider and has to provide for his family. And when he fails to do that, it can be very destructive. We've had some very key members of our community here that have committed suicide, and we really need to think about that because it is difficult in our community because so many. I don't want to get off on the economic side, but the economics and being able to have and hold a good job, and how jobs are used against people in this community in a way that I've found pretty destructive myself. Yeah. It can be difficult. So men need to know, and plus men are supposed to solve the problems on their own. They're not. Some of the older generation not raised with it's okay to be emotional. It's not okay to have a mental problem. You're supposed to be the tough guy. We've got those guys all over the movies all the time. But it takes a lot to reach out. I hope I'm just, like I said, it is difficult for men because we are the breadwinners, whether that's true or not in a culture that's dynamically shifting our role, our sexual role, our working role. We have a lot of issues. I mean, we see that with other cultures where it has been a matriarch and then it turned into a patriarch, and the difficulties in those things. And we have a lot of cultural things here with certain cultures where machoism, is a thing, and it can put a lot of pressure on us when we fail or when we don't feel like we are a success or we don't have hope of success. Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, the big thing is it's important that the most important thing for your family is that you're there for them physically, mentally, and spiritually and emotionally, and that you work together to get through the struggles when the material stuff doesn't work out the way it's supposed to, and that there's, when the watering hole dries up and all the deers leave and you can't bring meat home to the family, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad hunter and need to hang it up. It means that environmental circumstances have changed. The watering hole is gone. The deer are going somewhere else. We need to think about what to do. It doesn't mean that you're a bad hunter. And sometimes when you're not bringing the deer in to the table, you need to look at the environment and ask yourself, is this a good environment to hunt in? Is it a good environment to farm in? If the soil's gone bad, different things of that nature. So it's a lot easier sometimes in agriculture to use those metaphors. It's much more difficult in a modern age with some of the things that go on to identify the environmental factors that provide for some adversity in men. And
yeah, and I think you bring up a good point too. For men, it is very difficult to talk about your emotions. We have definitely created this cultural idea of a strong male. Yeah, exactly. Somebody who's there, any sort of mental instability or emotion, is seen as a flaw, and that's definitely not the case. It's definitely okay to talk about things that are bothering you and things that are upsetting you. And something else that you bring up that's a really good point, with suicide, unfortunately, many people feel that is their only option. They feel it is the solution to the problem. They feel that's their only way out, that they can't provide for their families, and so we, especially with the farmers, we see a lot of people who think about insurance claims and things like that. They're like, well, if I wasn't around, it'd be better off for the family. And that's not the case, guys. There's definitely other options. There's help out there to find those other options for you. Suicide often is felt like a solution to a problem, unfortunately. And so it's not even necessarily an escape per se, but many people feel that it is the fixer. And unfortunately, that's just not the case.
Well, unfortunately, like it says, in our society, and I've directly counseled a gentleman who was born in 1939, and unfortunately in our society, we have equated self-worth and human worth with dollar values. And much like you said about insurance, that was the exact conversation I had with this gentleman. He knew exactly what his insurance policy was, how much it was worth, and how little he could earn right now. And based on dollars, he felt that his life wasn't worth going forward. And that's a fact. I counseled him on that. Exactly. He's still with us today, by the way.
That's good.
But we unfortunately make the mistake of equating money with the person. And Waylon Jennings has a really good song, "Money Does Not Make the Man." You need to be there for your kids for the long term. They want to see who you become. It's so beautiful to watch children to flower and to flourish and become young adults. There's so much wealth in life that is beautiful that has nothing to do with dollars and cents.
Yep,
nothing.
You're exactly right. And then taking that time, kind of like you said, to talk to that person really makes a difference. They've said that, at least 90% of the suicides, just by asking the question, "Are you suicidal?" will get people to stop and think. And most of the people who attempt suicide truly regret it. So if we just get them to stop and think for a second, and then to really, get that dialogue going, to talk about what's bothering them, you can truly prevent a suicide. Suicide is the #1 most preventable cause of death in the United States.
Yeah, and the thing is too, though, like in my situation, you have to be aware. Like we said at the beginning of this could cause a trigger, and you have to realize when somebody's at that point, and you offer them a shoulder, they may fall on you with their full body weight.
Yep.
Which means, in metaphorical terms, it's a lot of weight. You've got to be willing to be there in a compassionate manner. That it's going to require a lot of you to do that. It's going to require a lot of you to do that. Hopefully, one thing you can learn about here is if that is the case, that you can find out that there's other resources that can help you help that person. You don't have to do it alone, but you do have to respect them. And unfortunately, with men, that vulnerability we see as a weakness, and some men tend to exploit it because that's just how they were raised. But if someone opens their heart to you and they open their wounds, you need to show them dignity and respect that. Don't gossip about it. Don't talk about it. Don't mock them. Don't do that with anyone. It can be detrimental, very detrimental to the healing process of helping them. It's a big honor when another man asks you for help, and
when they trust you enough to really talk to you about that. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and you have to respect their dignity. To use Christ, love them as you would love yourself. If you get in that position, treat them as you would want to be treated in that position, because it's not anything that anybody wishes on themselves. Like it says, life and circumstances. Pretty soon, just like my friends, you're looking at your insurance policy and you're thinking, I'm worth more dead than alive, and that's wrong thinking. And it can happen suddenly. And like Sam said, if you ask the question, you may wind up with quite a weight on you initially, but as I can personally attest to, it's worth it when the person finds joy past that event. And it is one of the rewards of my life is knowing someone who lived past that.
Yeah.
And to experience, but it's a big thing. You touched on a thing with me, Sam.
Yeah, it is a trigger.
Yeah.
All of you guys, you're impacted by suicide. Whether it's been somebody who's attempted suicide, somebody that has committed suicide. It affects everyone. And there's resources out there for people not only who feel suicidal, but for people who, kind of like you, Reese, who are in that position, who you have someone who you are concerned about. There are resources out there. SCOPE makes several little RAT cards, mental health resource cards, and things like that. You can go to our website, scopehealthcounselor.com. You can download those. You can also come by our office in the hub, right down from the plaza. We have all those resource cards for you. There are tons of resources out there, not just for those who are feeling suicidal, but also for those who want more information and want to know how to help their community members. It all even just boils down to the Stomp Out the Stigma, just reducing that stigma around talking about your mental health. Every little bit helps, whether it's just for you, for a community member, for your town. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, and it's difficult, like it says, just with a couple insights for men, because one of the things men tend to do, in my opinion, that I've observed, is that, you know, if I sacrifice my food, my kids will have more. I don't need to eat that much. I can do that, and they pull back from their diet. And that's a really wrong way to go, because as we discussed in the last hour, you really need good nutrition to think correctly. Sometimes your depression can deepen even worse when you drink alcohol, when you eat poorly, those type of things, which you tend to do because you start neglecting yourself because you're getting depressed. And one of the things I've always advised people in that position is do exactly 180 degrees the opposite of what you feel like doing. If you feel worthless and you don't feel like you're worthy of a good meal, that you're taking something away from somebody else or something else, it's time to turn that around and do exactly the opposite of what you feel.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if you feel like pulling away in isolation and not talking to people, you're going in the wrong direction. And the simplest thing is to do the exact opposite of what you feel.
Self-care is very, very important. You cannot take care of someone else if you're not taking care of yourself.
There's that old oxygen
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Oxygen. Yeah, exactly. And so it does play a huge part. You definitely have to take care of yourself. There's that old idiom that everybody knows, you know, you can't give from an empty cup. But it's so true. You really have to take a time out for yourself. You know, like Reese is saying, if you try to give yourself too much for your kids and sacrifice yourself, eventually you won't be able to support them because you won't have taken care of yourself. You won't be able to be there as a provider for them. So you really not just have to take care of yourself for yourself, but for your friends and family as well. It's very important.
Yeah.
And something that we were talking about, you know, with the men, one of the more tragic cases too is 52% of those men die from firearms with suicide prevention. And it goes back to that split second, having a moment, taking a moment to think. And so as the Health Council, with the partnership with a couple of groups in Albuquerque, we actually give out free gun locks because a lot of times just taking that second to truly unlock that gun makes a difference. It really does. It makes a difference. So if you need a free gun lock or you would like one, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to get you one. Unfortunately, with women, we have a higher rate of attempted suicide because firearms is not the primary choice for women. Unfortunately, a lot of times it is self-medication and things like that. So also, drug lock boxes. We do provide those as well for free. A lot of times, guys, it's just that split second. Just having them stop and take a breath makes a huge difference.
That 4-second breath that we talked about last time is huge. And unfortunately with weapons, you know, weapons are like that. They're very, very quick and very sudden, and it's all over.
No takebacks.
And no takebacks. I mean, I had some issues when I was younger. I had one issue with a firearm, and I did something stupid. Nobody got harmed by it. But when I realized how stupid it was and how quickly it happened, I kind of scared myself because I was like, dang, that was stupid and that was quick and something really bad could have happened. You know, so yeah, firearms are, they're like I said, lock triggers or something like that, especially like it says, and that is something, like it says, when you have a tragic event or a trauma that occurs and you find yourself starting to go into a dark place, you know, that's the time to start locking these things down and being aware that you're losing safety with yourself. I'm all for firearms by all means. But like I says, when your mental health begins to when you start noticing that you're going in a dark place and you don't feel like your normal self, that's the time to reach out to somebody and talk before you get to that split-second decision, because as Sam said, it can only take a second, and firearms, unfortunately, are way too fast.
Yeah, agreed. And like you know, basically we just got to be safe about it. And so if you just take a moment, you know you're going into a dark place, talk to somebody, you know, maybe lock up some of the firearms, lock up some of the alcohol, some of the medications, you know, taking that split second, you know, to pause really makes a difference.
Right. And that goes back to last discussion too about self-awareness. You know, self-awareness is a big thing. I know I've had some issues at times, and you really have to take an assessment of things and ask yourself, does my emotions actually does it actually reflect what my environment is, what my actual circumstances are? Do I have food? Do I have shelter? Does my family love me? Do I have people that love me and need me? Your emotions can deceive you a lot of times from what you actually have, and that things are actually pretty good. And that could be just triggered as well by nutrition. The nutrition is as much of a trigger of depression as an actual traumatic event.
Get those fruits and vegetables.
They're at the farmer's market.
Yeah, exactly. They were there in the plaza on this Saturday. So.
And then like what we're doing today with the 5K Stomp Out the Stigma, getting out, getting that exercise, even if it's a simple walk, that vitamin D that Sam talked about earlier, getting out for simple walks. Socorro County's got so many great places to walk, to get an exercise, that you can go down to Manzanera, you can go to K Suave, you can get a coffee, you can go eat happy at Yo Mama's, put a couple plugs in there for some of our local restaurants.
Yeah.
But
a lot of those places have bike racks actually too, so you can even ride your bike over there.
We did that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did that.
We put those chili wrecks in.
Yeah. So go chain your bike up at the Red Chili's outside those places and go grab a coffee.
Yeah, but you've got to be aware of yourself. You've got to take care of yourself, and like I said, you've got to recognize when you're starting to go in that. And as wives, as sons and daughters, as family members, extended family members, uncle, we've got to know when someone's not doing well, and we've got to be aware, and we've got to ask, like Sam said, the hard question, and make sure that we have that conversation, that we're ready to seriously listen. Don't say, do you need help? And then I'm too busy to talk right now. If you're going to ask the question, commit yourself to being there until that person has done what they needed to do, express what they needed to express, because you're going to do more damage if you're not really genuine and ready to listen.
Yeah, and putting another plug in there, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but we do have that question, persuade, refer, free QPR training. That is a suicide prevention training that we offer, and it is all about how to ask the question, are you suicidal? And then what to do when the answer is yes. So we go over resources, we go over how to start the discussion, we go over some discussion topics, we go over some of the signs. As we're talking about, the high rate of suicide in men, things to look out for, things to be aware of. Very common for both youth and men and even women starting to put their affairs in order, starting to get really organized. You'll see with students, if they're a great student, sometimes their grades will come down, but you'll even see the opposite of that. Sometimes they'll try harder because they want to leave on a good note, things like that. So some of those warning signs, can definitely be a trigger. Seeing that withdrawal, seeing somebody take a step back, seeing somebody who seems depressed, as we've discussed earlier, a lot of times you can't see that from the outside. It's not necessarily somebody who's not taking a shower, who's wearing grungy clothes, although that does happen. It can be somebody who decided to start wearing makeup for the first time in a while. It could be somebody who's really trying to leave on a good note and spruce themselves up essentially to leave a good impression.
Yeah, well, we know a lot in this society that appearances are usually the first thing, and so people that are trying to hide and suppress that, appearances can be one way to mask what they're feeling. What is it? The tears of the clown.
Yeah.
So it is important that we when we love someone, when they're our friends, when they're our family members, that we genuinely have that awareness, and that stems a lot from having a good dialogue with them, taking time to talk more than when there's a problem, establishing the communication early on. It's important. Yeah, it's important at a moment of crisis to do that. But it's important to improve our relationships, that we actually begin communicating, talk about what's going on in our lives. You can see movies all the time where the conflict ensues because one person has something happen and they refuse to talk about it, and there's not a dialogue that's active and continual. And so it's important in our husband and wife relationships, our boyfriend and girlfriend, father, son, daughter, mother, daughter, that we have these communications, that we know it's okay to open up and talk, and it's not something that's out of the blue. We do talk to one another, and it can go a long way. I mean, we talk about that with the old dinner table, when we actually sat around dinner tables and breakfast tables and talked to one another. But establishing that now would be a good thing, just to talk, because sometimes people are really surprised that something happens and they didn't know. Well, they didn't ask the question, and also they never had a dialogue.
And it's also that famous, how was your day? Fine. We take a moment. If you're going to ask somebody how their day was, go into a little in depth.
I got my checkbox. She said fine. Move on.
Yeah, exactly. You follow up on that. Find out if they're really fine.
Yeah. Ask those inquisitive questions, right? and open-end questions, not yes or no questions, questions that evoke a bigger conversation, and be ready to listen and be curious about how they're doing, because we're all having a different human experience, and we're all in different spheres, social spheres, work spheres. We're all in different spheres, and there's a lot we can learn from one another about this experience we call life that we're going through, when we ask those open-ended questions, and we don't just go, oh, she said fine, move on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing how much of a community you build with that too. I can't tell you how many times, like, my husband makes fun of me all the time because we'll even just hopping in an Uber, I'll learn the guy's life story by the time we get out of an Uber. Because taking that moment to really interact with your fellow human, to really talk to them and find out what's going on in their lives, is amazing how much of a difference that'll make in their day, because somebody actually took the time to care, but how much it'll brighten your day,
right?
Because you actually took a moment to learn about somebody, to learn about their culture, learn about where they're coming from,
What are their interests?
What are their interests?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing how you can start a conversation. We were in an Uber the other day, and we were up in Albuquerque. We were dropping off our car for some service, and we hopped in the car, and our Uber driver had some stuffed animals on the dash, and he had a cute little picture of his wife, his daughter, and a horse. And so we just started chit-chatting, and just like, well, let's basically tell me about the picture. And apparently his daughter, going back to the equine therapy, she had been in equine therapy. She'd been having some really harsh struggles. She has some motor skill issues, and the horses have been really helping her. But it was amazing. By the time we got out of that 10-minute car ride, how much of a difference it had made in that guy's day. To have a chance to talk about what was bothering him, to talk about what was going on with his daughter. I didn't know the guy, and I have not seen him since, but that 10-minute conversation made a huge difference.
In both your lives.
In both of our lives.
In both your lives. And I think that's the thing, is when we connect with others, we grow our actual community. We grow our community through our relationships, through our conversations, to exploring what it means to be human, not necessarily to be a persona. And it's interesting in that, because I know when I was younger, I worked at Sears, and I was an in-home service technician for Sears and Sony when I was younger. And it was amazing, the conversations, the therapy that I could give from behind a television set, because I wasn't a priest, I wasn't a counselor, I wasn't an authority figure. And a lot of times we think that those are the people to fix things, but a lot of times there's trust issues. And because of this stigma that we're trying to stomp out with mental health, there's a stigma with going to a counselor, there's a stigma to going to an authority. But just going to a friend or somebody that's off the street,
or a stranger, yep.
Or a stranger, it's amazing how open people are if you will take the time to listen, ask inquisitive questions, find out where they're coming from, and take a moment to really connect with another human being.
Yeah.
And you could save somebody's life by that.
You really can.
I mean, like we talk about these masks saving lives. Just a conversation can save a life.
Yeah. Going back to we were talking about the ripple effect earlier.
Oh, boy.
The main character, actually, he even said in the movie, he's like, to give you guys a little bit of background, he unfortunately, he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. He did survive, though. He's one of the few who actually lived to tell the tale. And so he's changed his whole life to actually doing suicide prevention outreach. But he even said specifically, he's like, if one person had stopped me on the street, he's like, I would have known my value. And he said, I didn't necessarily go in with the plan, but if somebody had stopped me on the street and said, how are you? I was ready to tell them the whole story, and I was ready to stop and really analyze my life, and I would have been prepared to not jump. But he said nobody asked.
Well, and that's that's the whole thing, because sometimes, a lot of times we've got these things bouncing around in our head. We're in a dark place, and boy, sometimes it's just talking it out. It's just hearing ourselves. It's like when we try to read a book to somebody, it's just talking it out and being able to talk it through. That we hear what we're saying, and those thoughts come back to us, and we're like, really, am I there?
Yeah. It's breaking that cycle. It's taking that 4-second breath, that breathing in.
But that value that isn't based on your social class, that isn't based on your earnings, that isn't based on those things, but based on the fact that you are a unique human being at this moment in time, and that there's an interaction and a relationship between you and others, and that you're here. And there's an immense value in how we influence one another's lives. Sam and I have influenced each other's lives.
Yeah.
Savannah as well, just to name some of the people within SCOPE. And, even Athena over there. And, so we all influence others' lives by being open, by being who we are. But we do, as I said, we have 3 words. We've got dependent, independent, and interdependent. And really we want to get to that interdependent stage where we're self-reliant within ourselves. We're self-reliant. We don't look for those external things, but we are interrelated and dependent on others, and we know our relationship with others, and that when we need help, there's somebody that we can reach out to, because their specialty, their gift is being that ear, that concern, that genuine concern that can help us get out of a dark place. And hey, how many guys get stuck in a Dutch and they need somebody to pull them out, tow them out?
That happened to me like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
We all get a flat tire on the side of the road. We all get that, and I've gotten in motorcycle wrecks and needed people's help, and it's a good thing because it allows other people to be there for us. And that doesn't mean being dependent on them all the time, but let other people give the gift of caring, and it makes an immense difference in our community.
It really does. And, and this dialogue, it definitely starts people's gears turning, of how do I help? What do I do? What are my next steps? And there's all sorts of ways that people can help. We've talked about just the simple act of reaching out to someone, to asking if they're okay, or just starting that simple dialogue. Not even necessarily, are you suicidal, but just, how was your day? Did you have a good day? What are some good things that happened today?
Do you feel appreciated today?
Yeah, do you feel appreciated? Or even, I appreciate you. That's very, very important. We talk.
Sam does that to me, and it really works.
It does. It makes a difference. A lot of people, we talk about the discussion of love all the time. A lot of people are afraid to say, I love you. And unfortunately, in our English language, there's not really a good terms for like friend love and things like that you get in like the Latin terms.
Oh, you're talking like agape, eros,
yeah, exactly.
familia.
Exactly. But it's okay to say, hey, I appreciate you. You are important to me as a human being. You make a difference. And it's okay to say that, feel comfortable with saying that.
Well, and we've got to get to a better place as a community, as a culture, that is okay. We've got cultures that men kiss each other on the cheek and hug, and that's completely normal. But yeah, like it says, a better language than just the word love. But what does that mean is that, that I care for you as another human being. I'm concerned for your well-being. I want to see you thrive, because, it's like for me right now, I could just give one example. I've had the really great pleasure with Rio Grande Valley Radio, to witness like Jenna and Casey, one of our young performers, from 2017, and watch them mature and grow. And it's such a privilege to watch them mature and grow. It's so beautiful. It's like I'm watching this tree or this rose or something grow, but I'm actually watching a very complex creature, a human being, grow into becoming a person, and you care because you want to see that happen. You want to see where, like a book chapter, you can't wait to turn the next page. The movie, you can't wait. You want to see where that person goes, and you're excited to see them grow. And that's the kind of love in our community, because we're interdependent. And when the other person's gifts, and they're all different,
yep.
When the other person's gifts can actually mature and flower, we're all better off. Henry David Thoreau said, and I love this quote of him, he said that the finest qualities of human nature are like the tender blooms of fruit. And we all know with an early frost what happens to that tender bloom of fruit. It don't happen. But we do not treat one another thus tenderly, he says. And so the finest qualities of being a human being are loving, our openness. The finest qualities that we have as children that usually get shut down with wounds when they get abused and preyed upon, those are the qualities that really make us great. And if we can figure out how to, be more loving and be more supportive and encourage the growth of those qualities, we as a human being, we're going to have a lot more fruit, of the caliber of great human beings.
Exactly. And then going off your fruit analogy too, it's all about, I love to say, is planting those seeds, because one problem, with community outreach and community programming, you'll hear a lot of us in the nonprofit world talk about it. It can take 10 years, to see a difference, which is amazing to think about. You think about like all the changes, with the school board, the new programming. We just got a new program that we're going to be starting called Drug-Free Communities, where we're going to start implementing some middle school curriculums. But it's going to take 10 years to see an impact in that in the community. But it's all about planting those little seeds. You don't know when something that you say is going to really take root and resonate with someone. And even if you don't see the change right then, you might see it in 10, 15, 20 years. You never know when something that you plant will really take root.
Well, and I think that's the higher level of consciousness in some ways. And I'm going to get a little elaborate here, but the fact is that our animal brain is very much in the immediate. How do I survive? Where's food? What's the next meal? What's the next thrill? We're very much involved in our sensory stimuli of reward and punishment in some ways, and a reactionary. But when we get to a higher level of thinking, we learn to think through time. We know that if we plant that seed now, we're going to have food in the winter. The baby's conceived. 9 months later, it shows up. When we start seeing, like when I do project management and things like that with large projects, it all starts out with a concept, but I have to be able to think out 5, 10, 20 years. How is that going to happen? How is that going to unfold? What are the steps that need to do that? And like you said, with people, you plant the seeds. You never know what the encounter is going to mean. And that's one where we need to be more rich in our environment as a community, because from my readings, I've looked at some biographies of some very famous people, and it seems to be somewhere between the age of 7 and 13.
Those impressionable years, yeah.
Those impressionable years that, hey, we watch Star Wars for the first time, or we see something at a museum, and these kind of things captivate our consciousness, they captivate our youth, and that fascination focuses our thinking, and guess what our thinking does? It goes longer term than short-term excitement. It goes longer term. Ryan Fritz has got a good song, about a girl with a horse. She's got something else she's dedicated to. She's dedicated to the horse. You don't have to worry about her with these things, because the momentary impulses that we talked about earlier that can be very dangerous, you've got long-term plans. You've got long-term things that you're thinking about. And when we mental up and when we try to stomp out the stigma of mental illness and mental health, we say, hey, this is like going to the gym. This is like lifting weights, but this is a different kind of it. It's those deep breaths. It's looking long-term and being able to direct our thinking to something that we want to achieve, not the banana on the tree right now, because the banana on the tree is easy. It's the plantation 20 years from now. And when we look at the transition from hunting, gathering to farming, we look at the transition from moment to moment hunting and trying to survive to saying, if I bust my neck right now and I plant this seed as you put in there, I can make a field.
Yeah, and that transition to long-term planning and long-term thinking, really, it makes a difference. It does. And, as we often see with mental health concerns, that capability to kind of think, into the future and make those long-term plans really becomes a struggle. And so one really easy key way to kind of prevent suicide is by making plans, by putting things in the future. So, say I talk to you recently, I'm like, hey, let's go get coffee on Monday. Making plans in the future really makes a difference. Don't just say like, oh yeah, we're going to get together at some point, it'll be fine, but make some of those plans. Give yourself something to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, and the thing is when you tell somebody that you're going to make plans like that and you don't do that, you set up a bad precedence because of the fact that they don't feel that they're really valuable to you, and that's a difficulty right there, because you don't want to convey that you're not valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
And
everybody is important.
Yeah, but that long-term planning is really important. Like I said, we talked about the impulse with firearms. We talked about all these things that occur in an immediate moment. The tragedy, the reaction, all of that happens in an immediate moment. And when we take those 4 seconds, those 10-second deep breaths, what we're asking ourselves is to really think longer than this moment. This is a moment. As adults, we've been through enough sometimes. If you live long enough, you know what, we're going to get through this. As younger people, sometimes we don't know that. And the other thing is sometimes, like you said, with the coffee, sometimes a dog, a cat, some other animal, a lizard that you have to take care of, that you have to be there for, can be a good way to do that. So if somebody won't open up to you and you know they're there, give them a dog, give them a cat.
Or give them a house plant.
Or give them a
house plant. There you go. Sometimes that takes more work than a dog, I've noticed. But
no, that's a good one. I appreciate you rounding it off, because if you're responsible for something else, it takes your focus off yourself and your own self-pity. And I use that word freely because it's because you tend to just think about you and you don't think about all the things that you're related to, connected to. And a plant, something that you have to take responsibility for, that says, I got to get up tomorrow morning or my plant's going to die because nobody's going to be there to water it. Can be game changers when you're dealing with depression.
Exactly. And I'll put a little plug in there. We've got the community garden. We've got free seed starting kits, things like that. If anybody wants one, hit us up. We can definitely get you those little things that you have to take care of really do make a difference.
And then the community garden, like Sam said, the nice part about that is you get out and you might actually run into somebody at the garden.
Yeah.
You're outdoors, you're out there, you're planting something. Like Sam said earlier, you get your finger in the dirt, but you might run into a neighbor, you might run into somebody you haven't known. And if you take the moment to open a conversation, don't interfere with what they're trying to do.
Let them weed. They need to weed.
Let them weed. We need the weeds gone. But, you open up that conversation. You open up that ability for a human relationship, a human connection. And that's where the value lies, folks. It doesn't lie in the dollars. It lies in the value of the human relationship and the human connections that we make.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And starting that dialogue about, your mental health and just connecting with people really makes that difference. And other ways that people can get involved too. There is the Scope Health Council. We always have events going on. There's Students Offering Solutions, which also is present in the hub. They're another suicide prevention group. They're the ones who host the movies at the Loma. We always have movies going on. If you want to do a little, we call them mental health pop quiz, where we ask questions about mental health and suicides in Socorro County and the U.S., and we'll throw out prizes. There's the Socorro County Prevention Coalition with the drug prevention. There is the DWI program that also does a lot of alcohol prevention and texting and driving prevention. There is clubs out there that need help. We have so many mentoring programs that we need mentors. We need basically community members to do a lot of these programs and to make them run. And so even if you don't feel like you can give a couple hours a week, that's fine. Sometimes we have a one-off event, even just sharing something,
Right.
Putting up a flyer, sending out an email, it makes a difference.
Right. And the statistics are part of the science, and the science is really good because the statistics actually tell us that even though things appear to be okay, they're really not okay. Kind of like the deer analogy. The water is drying up at the water hole, but if we measure it, we know exactly how much it's receding by every year. And we can measure that receding, and we can see the end result, that long-term thinking before it happens. The statistics help us see that, say, hey, I may have a job, I may be comfortable in my seat, I may have a good job and all these other things, but look at the community that I'm in. We're number 8 as far as suicide. We've got all these other problems there. We've got an increasing diabetes. We've got a food island. The statistics and the data is there to show, hey, we're not as good, we're not as well off as we think we are. And there's a lot of our neighbors, our community, that's suffering. And if our least are suffering, our greatest are suffering too, because then we have a hard time bringing those people into our community because of the conditions here, because of the quality of life issues. And the statistics are the good science that tells us we can't just shrug it off and say nothing's happening. When we see that we're number 8 in New Mexico for suicides, when we see that we're in the top 10 for the nation for suicides, while we're at the bottom 40 to 50 on other things, we know that we've got work to do. And if we're responsible, we can take that data and say, we need to make action. We need to take action in our lives and in our community to make a difference, to mental up, take self-awareness, take community awareness, and make a difference. Not only we change things scientifically, but we can change things psychologically. And there is very much as there is an individual psychology that we're all responsible for in ourselves, there's a collective psychology of who we are. Mm-hmm. And we all have a piece in that by how we behave to one another.
Yeah, and those assessments are very important too. Kind of like you're saying, those statistics, they make a difference. They really kind of inform us as to what's going on in the community. So here in a couple months, when we come ask you to do a community survey, please take the community survey.
Please do.
Yeah, please do. Throwing that out there, because it does. It makes a difference in kind of our planning. Scope was actually just working on our strategic plan of what we want to do both this year, next year, and in our 5 years. Because like you also said, Reese, having those plans for the future really are important. And we really need to analyze, the programming we have, what's working, what's not working, what are some things we can change. And your community input is very important to that. As a community, you very much have a say in what you feel like our needs are. Part of our community forum the other day was, kind of gauging our input of, not just what statistically we see as, some of the main diseases and main concerns, but what do we feel like is a pressing issue for our community.
Yeah, and like Socorro General Hospital, the healthcare provider, the goal of health is good health. Good health for the individual, for a life that is self-reliant, that thrives, that does well. That's the goal. So working in a community as a hospital, we don't want to just be sitting there taking all the emergency cases of everything and letting the fallout happen. We're trying to look at our society and say, how can we actually reduce the input to ER for taking over medication to try to commit suicide? How can we do this for alcohol-related accidents? How can we do this for drug overdoses? How can we reduce that? How can we prevent tomorrow's drug overdose today? How can we prevent a drug overdose 5 years from now today? And looking at the statistics, yes, you're more than a number, but we need those statistics because we're taking the vital signs of our community and our population to say, how are the vital signs right now? Are we healthy? And when we look at the vital signs, the one that I saw on Friday, I'm a little bit on edge because I'm like, wow, that's just, I mean, I can see the economics. I can see that when I see the effect on our quality of life, when people are giving up on life itself and saying it's not worth living anymore, that tells me it's pretty extreme.
Yeah. And if anybody is interested in any of this data too that we're talking about,
Right.
it is all, for the public. We use it as organizations to plan out our programming, but also if you're just curious as to what some of these concerns are, if you have a target demographic or something that you're trying to reach, we do have all this data. It is on our website. You can also go to tinyurl.com/Socorro data, and all that data is public use. You're more than welcome to that data, so you can see what we're targeting and why.
Right. Well, that's great to know. So they can get the data. It is public. So yeah, so we as a community can take a look at it like I did the other day and go, oh my gosh, I know some things, but now I know more than I wanted to know.
And for the mental health, take a deep breath before you look at the data and after. And if you do have some concerns about the data, there is help out there, and you can also reach out to us at Scope, and we can be more than help. We can help you navigate that.
All right, so let's talk about some of the resources around here. Let's give some numbers where we take another break and come back. Again, what was that 1-800 number for suicide?
Yeah, 1-800-255-TALK. And so that's 1-800-255-TALK.
Okay, talk. And that's a good one. Any other resources you want to mention?
Sure, yeah. So Scope has the QPR trainings and the Narcan trainings. It's sort of for prevention. We have substance misuse prevention trainings. We offer all sorts of resources as far as lock boxes, gun locks, medication disposal kits, anything like that. So come reach out to us at the hub. We offer quite a few resources there. There also is the New Mexico Crisis Line as well. They are a mental health resource here in Socorro and also in the state. So their phone number is 1-855-662-7474. They also have a website as well, the NewMexicoCrisisLine.com. They also have a chat. So I know for a lot of youth out there, you don't necessarily want to talk on the phone. You don't want to have your parents kind of overhear what you're talking about. And so there is an online chat with them.
That's great. All right, take me back to the beginning. You said something and you said Narcan. What was before you said Narcan?
Yeah, so we have the question, persuade, refer training. That's the mental health. We also do offer mental health first aid trainings. We partner with Jackie Muncie at the New Mexico Department of Health for that. We offer free Narcan trainings, and we do dispense Narcan as well.
And what exactly is Narcan for us who may have no clue what Narcan is?
Yeah, so Narcan is a wonderful intranasal medication, and it prevents an opioid overdose.
Okay.
And we recommend all community members, anybody who is interested, please become trained. We will train you at the hub to dispense it. It's a little intranasal spray. You just squirt it right in the nose, and it'll stop the opioid overdose.
Fantastic. That's good news. So that's Narcan, folks. And you should be aware, too, we're talking about an increase in overdose deaths and things coming up in the 2020. We're seeing some of that. And again, some of that's fentanyl. Fentanyl's kind of gotten into every drug out there, it seems like, from what I've read. And it has a very, very, you can die real quick with that.
It's very potent.
Very potent. That's the word. Thank you. So Narcan's a good thing if you know about it, know how to use it. Nasal sounds like it's really easy to apply and get a result to save someone's life. But just be aware out there. There are some things out there that are really, really bad. And once you've done the damage, it's really hard to undo.
Yeah, it's really hard to undo. And as we're talking about mental health, because a lot of people unfortunately do use substances as a way to treat their mental health.
Self-medication.
Self-medication, it's a thing. And also just as a way of kind of getting that few minutes of joy back in your life. You're talking about the inability to do the long-term planning, getting those few endorphins. So unfortunately, mental health and substance misuse goes hand in hand. It is a medical disorder. So we do have the Narcan trainings. We do have drug disposal kits, lock boxes, all sorts of helpful handouts, and all sorts of information for people.
Yeah, and that's, some of that stuff we just talked about earlier. We talked about it internally. Like it says, the 5K run that we're doing right now, getting out for a walk, that exercise can help you produce those dopamines, those endorphins, and things like that. Having a good conversation with a friend, telling a stupid joke and laughing can release chemicals within your body that you don't need to get from outside. As we said in the last hour that we had, if you can learn how to generate it within yourself, by taking a moment, by meditating, by going out with friends, by exercising, your body produces these chemicals naturally. Your body produces these chemicals naturally. You can do that. Good diet is important. Exercise is important to do that. You've got to watch those things about your physical reality that you're living in, because you don't necessarily need it from outside. You can find ways to find a laughter, sit on a swing bench, go down to the river, see a crane, see a hawk, see a roadrunner, see something that gets your imagination going. There's a lot of events going on right now, from an art exhibit up in Montaner to the craft shows that are going out, a chance to interact with people. Those kind of social interactions, those opening up and those conversations produce chemical results in the body. That are healthy for you, that aren't addicting you to a natural substance, something that your body is ready to respond to. But you need to know that you can do that, and it can be as simple as a phone call to somebody who loves
Or it can even be as simple as wearing a t-shirt. We were actually just, in our last break, I was getting some text messages from one of our 5K participants. She's got the Stomp Out the Stigma shirt on. And she said that as she was walking, walking actually, and she had another 5K this morning, so she wore the t-shirts and stuff, and she said that she started some nice dialogue with quite a few people who were just basically asking about the t-shirt, asking what Stomp Out the Stigma is, or even just seeing it's okay to talk to somebody on your t-shirt. It makes a big difference. So even if you don't know that you're making that impact, it does. It leaves an impression.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing here today, folks. We've got these long hour sessions. We're just about ready to wrap up another hour, and we're trying to stomp out the stigma that it's okay to talk about mental health issues. Like I said, if there's a trigger, if something triggers something and you need a counselor, she gave some resources. 1-800-255-TALK is one of them. Here around Socorro, your wellness partners, we've got is Full Circle Recovery. I know some of them have closed. Full Circle Recovery, 505-865-4141. Again, that's 505-865-4141. Full Circle Recovery. Socorro Mental Health, 575-838-3199. Again, that's 575-838-3199. That's Socorro Mental Health. We got Alamo's got behavioral service, Socorro County CAP, Magdalena Wellness Program, Root Counseling Center. I'm with Rio Grande Valley Radio. You're seeing this on Facebook or YouTube. We're going to put it up on our Facebook page right now and a little bit here, and you can go there and find those resources and those numbers. It's a little difficult to do it like this. You may not catch it. But it's there, and we want you to know that there's a lot of resources available here in Socorro County. There's some significant resources that have been focused on the county. You said Bernadette with the what was the drug program?
Drug-free communities.
Drug-free communities. She's going to be working with our youth, and hopefully we'll see some positive results from that. I'm at Rio Grande. We're going to be working to get some of this information out and bring back some of our conversations with Jason Frame, who's also involved in addiction therapy and things like that, because together we can all get better, and that means great things not only for the individual but for the community, because we lose too many human gifts. Lose too many human gifts, and the potential and the variety of human beings with the struggles that people go through and the lives that we lose. So we'd like to turn that around, and that's why we're doing this, because it's okay.
It's okay to talk about it.
It's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, and it's not too late. You can still sign up for the 5K too if you want one of these fancy T-shirts. Sign up at tinyurl.com/scope5k. Registration is open until midnight tonight. And then we also have a lot of those resources that Reese mentioned. We have handouts on those. You'll see around town, you'll see some little window clings with that 1-800 number on it. If you'd like one of those in your business, let me know. We can get that for you.
Yeah, now if you want to know, like it says, there's a couple offices right here in Socorro. Scope is real easy to find. They're at the hub. They're right there at the corner of Manzanera and California Street. I think it was the old Red Rose thrift store.
It was.
The old Red Rose thrift store is where they're at right now. Right there on the corner, right across from First State Bank. Real easy to find. Socorro County Community Alternatives Program is just around the corner. Boy, I got that out.
Yeah. Good job.
They're just around there with Jason Frame and Athena there and DWI and stuff. So there's a lot of people here.
And they've got some hay rides going on tonight, too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
At the plaza?
At the plaza.
See?
So if you want to find out where the DWI office is, come to come to the plaza tonight and hop on the hayride.
Yeah, is that the part of the electric parade?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. See, I told you guys earlier on the radio, I says, if you get down to the plaza any time today, something's going to be happening.
It's true. It's true.
That's wonderful. Well, hayride, and you get to know some of the great people over there like Jason, and there's some new people coming to the community as well. And we just, this community has so much to offer as far as an environment, and what we want to do is raise the quality of life for the human beings that are living here. And that's by being more kind to one another, by loving one another. And that loving isn't, that loving is a broader term of, I care about Sam and what happens to Sam. I want to see Sam flourish and grow, and she wants to see me flourish and grow, and I want to see you flourish and grow, because then I get to enjoy your talents, your gifts, and what you bring to my community as another individual that's different from me.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Socorro, because we've got all the cultures. We got the Dene, we got the Hispanic, we got the Anglo, we got all this mixture here. And boy, what a neat place to live.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. Love it out here.
Yeah, definitely. All right, are we ready to take a break? We're just about 1 hour.
Yeah. Sounds good. Everybody grab another cup of coffee or some water. Probably switch to water now and join us back.
Switch to water now. All right, folks, we're going to sign off for right now, and then we'll be back we'll be back at, 2:14 now, so we'll be back at 2:30, and we'll do a final 30-minute closeout here and kind of wrap things up and summarize today. And like I says, if you're out there running the virtual 5K, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Good job, everybody, for running. We appreciate it. And feel free to go on the race dashboard website and on the Facebook page and check out some of the race times. Congratulations to everybody for running those races. I've been very impressed with some of those times that have been coming in.
And that's really great that you choose to participate. It's been a difficult time, but it's great to get out there and compete and play together as a community, because play is an important aspect of mental health. And we can talk about that more when we come back. All right, anything else we'd add before we sign off?
I think we're good.
All right, folks, we'll be back in about 15 minutes here on Rio Grande Valley Radio. We're going to close out our Stomp Out the Stigma. Woo-hoo! All right, have a great moment. We'll be back in about 15 minutes. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This is Reese and Sam.